So for anybody that walks into this video not knowing what this question is about, this is when I said, if you believe that global warming was caused by people, or if you believe global warming is a hoax, you're both wrong, okay? And I'm going to put all the resources at the end of this video, okay? Now, when you ask anyone for proof of global warming and that mankind caused global warming, they're going to give you this, right? They're always going to give you a graph that looks like this, which basically is a graph from the industrial age up to present. And I mean, look at that. They're counting on the fact that you won't look any further than this graph. You guys have to understand that the government and corporations count on your ignorance, okay? This graph is not a lie. The problem here is the manipulation of the presentation of information to manipulate your opinion, okay? So now, this part right here, I want you to remember this graph. It's true, all right? And now I'm going to need you to turn your phone horizontally. Hi, I'm up here now. All right, I'm going to step out of the way for a minute so that you can see the full expanse of this graph. Okay, this is what they don't show you, okay? This is the last 400,000 years of the Earth's history with temperature and carbon dioxide in the air together. Now, how do we know this information? This comes from rock cores and also from ice cores. And as you can see, well, the most important thing is, you see that yellow line? You see that yellow line right there? That one? So this line right here is the entire time that modern humans, Homo sapiens sapiens, have been on the planet Earth. And if we zoom in to 0, which is present day, the last 100, 200 years, you see this line right here? That's us. This is us. The industrial era until now is us. Now you can already see that before industry, carbon dioxide has went through the roof. Before industry, the temperature has been higher. We're going to sidestep for a minute. So the oldest Homo sapien, or us, skeleton, has been now known to be 300,000 years ago. And we were already humans, which means we probably existed at least another 300,000 years before that, because you have to evolve from something, even if it was the Anunnaki thing. My point is the oldest complete skeleton we had is 300,000, and we had to get to that point. So that means we got to add on another 200,000 or 300,000 to get to that point, okay? So that puts us back at Homo sapiens at least being on the planet a minimum of 400,000 years. This entire graph is from 400,000 years. So we've been on the planet at least this entire time in this graph. And I need you to look and see that the Earth, all on its own, has had higher concentrations of carbon dioxide and higher temperatures than today, at least 5 times. Well, let's not count hours. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 times before modern humanity, Homo sapiens sapiens. 4 times. So as much as human beings would like to think that they can alter the entire planet, no, you can't. Let me give you an equivalency of how much we have sped up global warming. If we were to put the last 400,000 years on a 12-hour clock, okay, We have sped up the Earth's regular processes by about 2 seconds. 2 seconds. Okay? Now I'm going to take my face off of here so y'all can really look at this and digest what I'm telling you. We've been here the whole time. Okay? And this is what we've done. And on top of that graph, there's one thing they never show you, okay? And they don't tell you about. And that's methane. So they'll show you this. This is the modern era. But it is a real problem. Now, methane is a real problem. Why is methane such a real problem? Way more severe than carbon dioxide, okay? Methane has 80 times the warming capacity in the atmosphere compared to carbon dioxide. And it's worse the first 20 years after it reaches the atmosphere. Unfortunately, we have constantly been pumping methane into the atmosphere since we started breeding livestock. So we can't just wait 20 years because it gets way worse than this, okay? But the 20 years mark doesn't matter because we have pumped up astronomical amounts of methane into the atmosphere since we started breeding livestock. As you can see, methane went up long before the Industrial Revolution time. But we really started fucking things up when corporations took over food, specifically livestock farming. Now, we're not even going to address the cruelty issue in this post. This is a feedlot, as far as the eye can see. This is how we raise beef now. Here's an aerial view. And they're like this the world over, not just the USA. This is how pigs are raised. Aerial view. The world over, not just in the United States. This is how chickens are raised. The world over, not just the United States. It's an aerial view. But here's the kicker. It's not that we're raising that many. It's what we're feeding them. Seriously, stay with me. All three of these livestock animals are fed corn and soy, which they are not supposed to eat. And because they are fed these things, the amount of methane that they produce is exponentially higher than if they each were fed properly. In 2016, the world consumed 300 million cows. 2019, 1.3 billion pigs. 2016, 66 billion chickens. And as our population goes up, this goes up. Now let's think about how many tons of methane that alone puts into the atmosphere. But wait, there's more. So when you look for stats, they're going to show you this. 33% of emissions are due to the transportation or activities surrounding fossil fuels. 33% in America. Sounds huge. Darn those fossil fuels. Does the air over America only stay over America? No, it doesn't. If you combine this with the global industrialism, such as China, we know they don't have any EPA standards. It's a minuscule amount. Okay? And in relation to the other things I'm going to show you, correcting this won't do anything. Hold on. Next culprit, dumps. Landfills, as they like to call them now. billions and billions and billions of pounds of trash. All organic trash rots and produces methane. Now, in our country and in other countries, part of it's open like this, and then we'll cover the rest with dirt as if that stops it, but it looks better. However, the majority of the world's dumps are open like this, like the notorious dump from Mexico City. Pumps out tons and tons of methane a year. And finally, we have wastewater treatment plants. In industrial worlds, we have wastewater treatment plants, but in certain cities, like in India and stuff, it's just dumped into the river. It's all methane. What comes out of us is methane too. And when the solid waste and stuff breaks down, it's methane. Tons and tons and tons and tons of methane. Now, because we have produced so much methane, that is what has raised our little 2 seconds. And by doing that, we sped up the last and final straw of the global warming, which releases millions of tons of methane into the atmosphere, way ahead of schedule. And that is the thawing of permafrost. Permafrost is vital to a stable climate because it froze while the matter was still organic. So it stopped the breakdown, the rotting, which produces carbon and methane. When permafrost melts, that process restarts. And boy, has it restarted. Would you like to know what these are? Maybe you think they're sinkholes. They're not. These are all craters in the Arctic, especially in Siberia, from methane explosions out of the ground, from the permafrost melting. It explodes like a bomb out of the ground. See all this? All these bubbling lakes that have increased exponentially in the Arctic. And when they're not frozen, they constantly look like they're boiling. And it's methane because the permafrost is melting. So why do you never hear about this? This is where it gets into politics. And this is where you're going to need to listen, okay? You're not going to hear about methane in regards to anything in politics because you can't fix this. It's not fixable, period. Not in a natural way. The last time this happened was 150 million years ago, due to some shifts in the orbit of the Earth, which caused this kind of thing to go on. You can't, it's not fixable. And if you know it's not fixable, you're not going to support or donate money to politicians and give your vote to politicians for green energy if you know that methane cannot be stopped. So in 1991, when Clinton was running, even if it had been mentioned before, when Clinton was running and won in 92, that is when green energy and fossil fuels are bad and carbon emissions really came to the forefront. And it was used both for donation causes and votes, because they really had us freaking out, We got to handle this right now. And that's been since 1992. And I don't know if y'all have noticed, but other smaller countries with much better arbor laws, I think Sweden, one of them, has had wind farms forever because they have the terrain where the wind is blowing all the time. And nobody's really went into the land of solar because of the amount of damage it does to set up solar fields or all that. But still, so we've contributed billions and billions of dollars towards green energy and green energy candidates since 1992. Do you see any wind farms? Do you see any solar farms? You're not going to, okay? And as a side note, we have plenty more fossil fuels, just an FYI. We're not running out. That's a great big ass lie told to you by the government. But did you notice we don't have any green energy? Since 1992, we can clone a human being, but we haven't figured out green energy. Of course we can do green energy. Thank God for my future boyfriend, Elon Musk. Of course we can. But there's a reason why they perpetually don't tell you about methane, because you can't fix it. And they just can't seem to do anything about green energy. Because it's an easy fix. Trees. Yes. Trees. Not just trees, but all the other plants that come along with forests, down to the lichens and the fungus that grows in the floor, the shrubbery at the edge, the vines, the grasslands that go in between. This is what you need. Trees breathe carbon dioxide, and then they also fix carbon out of the atmosphere in their structures. And they breathe out oxygen. Let me read this out loud for you. New study published in Nature estimates the planet has currently 3.04 trillion trees. And the research says 15.3 billion trees are chopped down every year. It also estimates that 46% of the world's trees have been cleared over the past 12,000 years. That's like 8 trillion trees. 8 trillion! But wait, there's more. I can take my state, for example. Try to get an arbor law passed in this state, you'll be hung. You'll be tarred and feathered. Forests greatly reduce local climates. South Carolina has triggered up on the heat factor. I've been here since 1976. And if you watch the clear cutting rate, it will go on the same thing. And it's not a correlation, okay? So plants, specifically trees, forests, reflect an enormous amount of heat back up into the atmosphere. So it never gets down to you. It greatly reduces violent storms, and it pulls in rainfall. So when you're in a state, like we had 4 seasons when I was a child, and we stopped having them pretty soon after that, but it follows the clear cutting. So trees are more than just for fixing carbon dioxide, okay? The amount of carbon dioxide with which trees and land plants can pull out means that the ocean, with all its phytoplankton, algae, but cellular plants, aren't overloaded. And so they can do their part to pull the carbon out without causing further acidification of the oceans, because the methane is already working on the acidification of the oceans. The EPA does need to be in place for things like car emissions and for emissions from plants. But let me tell you why Republicans defund and get rid of EPA, and this is important. A lot of people will fault Republicans because they dismantled the EPA. And I think that regulations on automobiles and stuff like that should stay in place for the individual. Okay. But I'm going to explain to you why currently having not that the EPA should just deregulate everything, but why, even when the EPA has pollutant standards in place, it doesn't make a difference globally. Air circulates over the whole globe. And we don't even remotely produce enough, especially now that we exported all our industry overseas. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything because this is the main producers. Look right below us even. If the world doesn't cooperate, it makes no difference. Okay? That's the bottom line. These clean the air no matter where the air comes from. And then that takes the load off all the algae in the ocean, which can finish the rest. But you try to get an arbor law passed in your state and see what happens. They will not pass it. Do you know why? Because it costs too much money for urbanization. Heaven forbid, grading companies and construction companies would be forbidden to cut down trees that are bigger than X amount diameter. And that is your bottom line, folks. Money. That's the bottom line to why all of this charade is put up for y'all. Money. Profit, more specifically. Everyone loses profit if they give a shit about the planet. If farmers still raised livestock on their own land and we only consumed the livestock we raised, and we had arbor laws and actively replanted trees, and you can't replant just any trees, by the way. You have to plant the trees that are native to the area. So your little decorative pear trees that's in all your suburbs ain't doing shit. If the government gave an incentive for individuals, even renters, to get individual solar panels put on their house, combined with the other things, which is never going to happen because it takes profit from the power monopoly, the electricity monopoly. But if they did, that would also greatly reduce the problem we have going on here. Imagine how many forests we could have put back since 1992 instead of paying money towards or donating towards green energy and voting in people that were full of shit. Just imagine the money we could have used for planting forests, but more importantly, pushing arbor laws through every state, preferably nationally. It needs to be a national thing. This isn't an open ticket to just treat the earth like shit. Don't get me wrong. But the citizens need to separate themselves and their responsibilities from industry. So, like, recycle your personal plastics. Compost your organic trash. Plant trees on your property. Put solar panels for just your house. Push for arbor laws in even starting in your county. Because industry needs to be separated. Individuals can do a lot. So, overall, we cannot stop global warming. We sped it up about 2 seconds worth. We just happen to be alive in these 2 seconds. But that doesn't discount your personal responsibility, okay? You got to stop looking at this as a big thing because the people in charge of the big things don't care. You have to go about it with your individual world, right? So recycle, compost, plant trees on the property, keep your property clean, stuff like that. Press for arbor laws. I've been shot down repetitively in South Carolina. Because when the population as a whole can go, we're doing our part, you're failing. And it's a global failure. So global warming is coming. It's not going to stop. If we look through Earth's history, the maximum the Earth takes before it resets is 9 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius. But what do I mean by reset? So the scientists will tell you that it's just going to just keep getting hotter and hotter and hotter, and it's just disastrous, and we're going to fry. And that's not what happens. It will continue to heat up. And the thing is that to this day, we have found and keep finding cities that are now very far underwater. That were on high, dry land long before we were industrialized. But for some reason, modern day people think that they shouldn't have to move. Seriously. Just because they've been there and their ancestors have been there. Blah, blah. These human beings feel like they shouldn't have to move. And if we just fix global warming, the sea will quit rising. Not gonna happen, dude. Sorry, I'm glad you think you're that important. Not gonna happen. You need to move. There's some island nations that are not gonna exist soon. Because number one, you're not gonna stop global warming. And number two, the earth does not give a whether or not you want to leave or not. That's not how the earth works. I'm glad you think you're that important, but you're not. As for the reset I was talking about, let's go back to that first graph. So I think it's pretty obvious. After we reach a maximum, where am I? After each maximum, it doesn't keep going higher and higher and we cook. It drops. And we get colder. And we have no idea how the earth does this. No clue. Can't find it. But clearly methane levels go down and whatnot. And we drastically start dropping off until after a few 100,000 years. We're in not a complete ice age, but there's a lot of glaciation that goes on. So no, we don't just cook. I just want people to understand how you're being misled, and it is for profit. They don't give a shit about the earth. And the people that are fighting for the environment are basing their fight off of manipulated information. Knowledge is power. So, I'm going to put this on Duet. Because, you can just duet it green screen in order to share it. And I would appreciate it if you repost and share at least part 1. Because then that will lead them to the other ones. And also, I'm going to put this together on YouTube. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
planet has been through a lot worse than us. Been through all kinds of things worse than us. Been through earthquakes, volcanoes, plate tectonics, continental drift, solar flares, sunspots, magnetic storms, the magnetic reversal of the poles, hundreds of thousands of years of bombardment by comets and asteroids and meteors, worldwide floods, tidal waves, worldwide fires, erosion, cosmic rays, recurring ice ages, and we think some plastic bags and some aluminum cans are going to make a difference? The planet isn't going anywhere. We are. We're going away. Pack your shit, folks.